Welcome to today's live edition of For Small Business Owners Only. We're going into building contracts for long-term growth. Now, this one's really a big one because it affects revenue and protecting your profits. So we've got a lot to get into. I'm very excited. As you can see, I am still in my Princess Leia headset due to a microphone issue. So thanks for being on board. Coming to you live from Las Vegas. Super, super excited. Now, if you're ready, because I know I am, let's get into this action. So, what is the action happening today? Today, we're going to go through about 20 to 30 minutes of just some practical guidance, right? Looking at the now versus the later. How do we change our mindsets? And what are sort of the checklist things that we can walk through as business owners to make sure that we are maximizing our opportunity and not leaving revenue out, on the table, but also making sure revenue doesn't leak during the term of the contract. And that's what we're going to really focus on today. We're going to look at 3 considerations, and then we're going to have an open Q&A where you get to write in your questions into the chat. We are streaming live across multiple platforms right now, so wherever you're at, go ahead and get that chat ready. And once we have those open and available to you, you can go ahead and do that. And then I'll also have a freebie for you just for attending this, ways to protect your business and increase that revenue. Bam! All right, now it's an exciting Thursday over here for me. I'm loving it. So I'm super, super pumped for this because this is a topic that has always been near and dear to my heart, even before I went to law school. My name is Acacia Thornton. I am the CEO legal coach. I am a licensed attorney. I'm a business coach, and I have been doing small business advising and consulting for over 20 years. Ooh, things you don't want to say, but you do need to say. Yeah. And I am a big believer that all businesses have the right to not only protect their ideas from day one, but to also maximize their revenue from that, which is what makes today's topic one very near and dear to my heart. So let's start looking at what are we looking at when we close a deal, right? When we're talking about short-term versus long-term, let's start with where we are right now, today. And today, you are ready to close this deal, right? You have a contract opportunity in front of you, whether that's with a new supplier that you're excited to be getting whatever it is they're going to be supplying for you, because it's going to help you run your business better. It's going to help your products be better. It's going to help you create more revenue or better profit margins. And that is ultimately so you can then deliver things to your customers. And customer agreements are really exciting because it means money, right? You've worked hard for this sale. You get to close that sale. Bam, done. And so this is what's going on today. We're going to take all of those conversations that you have had with the other side, and we're putting pen to paper with it. We're saying, this is what we agreed on. This is the product or services that are being exchanged. What's getting exchanged for that? Usually money, but sometimes other things. And we're going to look at that goal and the dream vision of this deal right here, right now. Bam, signed, amazing. Yes. But the term of the contract is not just today. No, the contract usually has a term, often for years, right? It could be up to 7 years. There's even 10 and 20-year contracts out there. There's even longer. There's one in Illinois for 100 years. But either way, your contract is going to survive more than just today, which means as things start to progress, the contract and what you've agreed to today starts to be the guidepost for all of that, right? And things are going to happen over time. They're supposed to change over time. And we love that as entrepreneurs because it means your customers might grow and change. Your vendors might grow and change. And that could be great because it means you get more efficiencies, better technologies, better pricing. And then as your customers grow and change, you get the opportunity to sell your product and your services into that more and more. We all love this, and we all love industry dynamics, especially when they're going upward and bringing in more revenue, more product opportunities, and more partnerships that we get to work with. And then, of course, there is your own company outlook, right? It's not just about the supplier or the customer. What are your goals as a business? Are you building and developing your current product portfolio to be bigger and better? What is going to be your next sale opportunity for your customers next year? Are you going to use the same product and do something that enhances it? Are you going to do something that supplements it? Are you going to create a whole other product offering altogether? All of these things play in. And we always look for the best in all of these. But as we know, market conditions are always changing. And the direction the customer goes, the directions the vendors go, and the directions you go are not always going to be the same directions at the same time, at the same pace, with the same goals. Those will change over time. So, well, today we had that goal of this is going to be the use case for the product, or this is what you're going to do with what we have to offer. This is how you're going to use it. The truth is, over the term of that contract, things are going to change because that's what makes opportunity a business opportunity over time. Things don't stay stagnant. So today for them and today for you, money, loving it, dream goals are being achieved. That's why people are signing the contract. But the truth is, tomorrow everyone's going to be like this. And that's a fun, exciting roller coaster. We're just not always going to be going the same direction at the same time. And this is where starting to think about not just the short term, what business are we closing today? But how does this contract play even into upcoming revenue opportunities over the term? And that's going to be part of our key considerations today. And things don't always change for bad reasons either. Like I had a client, I was working for a company, and they were so excited. There was a customer of theirs who was kind of like a part customer, a part supplier of theirs, and they've been working with them for years. And so they were really excited. They're like, you know what? It's time that we're going to make a joint product. This is awesome. We're so excited. It's going to make both companies a really good amount of money. We're both going to put assets. We're both going to put intellectual property and build this together. And it's going to, most importantly, impact the industry in a way unlike ever before because no product like this exists. So both parties super pumped, super excited. They start working on this. Definitely trustworthy partnership because they've been working together for a long time already on other things. So this was the next step in the relationship. And they had signed, I believe it was a 5-year contract to really get this project off the ground. Well, guess what happened just 1 year into that project? A disruptor came in. Out of nowhere, a disruptor came in with a product that solved the problem these two were going to jointly solve together, and it did it better. Here it was, already ready, doing it better, without the research and development costs, without the risk of the intellectual property concerns, without 5 years of waiting. It's right here, right now. And it's in the market, which meant the opportunity that they were going to have out of selling this big product they were going to create together was no longer going to be the reality. Industry shifted. What do the parties do? They have contracted to do these things together. They have both contracted that for 5 years they're going to be sharing these types of assets. Well, it didn't make sense to do that anymore. So we went through and we found different ways and variations to break that contract up and slowly terminate it as we were able to save both parties the time, effort, and money because it made better business sense to just jump in and become a customer of this new disruptor. And that was one of those things that today, when they signed that contract, the outlook was brilliant. It was amazing, but nobody did anything wrong. Nothing went bad, just the industry changed. And so tomorrow, 1 year into that 5-year contract, things had to change. And thankfully, the terms of that contract were built in a way that they could do so in a way that saved them time and money and not having to continue with their obligations for 4 additional years when it wasn't going to get them the payback that they wanted. And that's going to bring us into our next consideration here. The end. What happens at the end of your term? Let's say you've signed a 3-year contract with your customer for your product. What happens when that hits? What do they get to do with your product? Do they get to continue using it for the same reason they got it from you? Can they use it for other reasons? Do they have to give it back? Is it just theirs to own? Can they resell it? What happens to the product itself when the term of the contract is over? Because here's the thing, product is still in their hands, but your terms that you agreed to, your protections, everything else, they're no longer valid. That contract is over, which means the terms are no longer living. Yes, there's things called survival clauses and certain types of terms that you can continue surviving, but you first even have to think about that. What do you want to continue existing with your product? What happens at the end? Are there other actions the other side should take? Should they give your product back? Should they destroy it and return it? Do they get to own it? Do they get to keep it? Do they get to resell it, not resell it? What are the actions you might want them to take regarding your relationship with them and regarding the product or services that you've delivered to them? Because things get stale, but stale is also risk because your stuff is out there and you would still be responsible for what's out there, depending on how it got used or accessed, and you're not updating it or anything like that. So those types of things. What happens when it ends? And then the last one, and this one, a lot of people don't think about with that short-term versus long-term revenue thinking. What's the next step of the business relationship? We all know that it costs more money to acquire a new customer than it does to retain an existing one. So great, you've made this sale today. You've closed this sale. What are we doing to set up during this term while they are your existing customer to help them continue being a customer? What happens next? Is there going to be auto renewal? Is there going to be an upgrade? Is there going to be a change in the way they utilize your services? Maybe you're giving them something entry level with the goal of getting them to the next level. Having these things in mind and built into the contract to shape that relationship and that dynamic, particularly at the end of that contract, are really important to help shape the conversations because you want to have a reason to reconnect with them. Not just, all right, we bought from you a year ago, cool, we're done. All right, sayonara. We want to facilitate ongoing relationships so we have repetitive, ongoing business from the customers we've already worked really hard to obtain, and now we want to retain. Let's see. I made a note here to give you guys a story of, let's see. Oh yeah. This is just one that I see a lot in newer businesses is they don't really think about that end. They're just so excited, especially with the license. They're just like, here, we license you the product. All you're doing is delivering it to them. And I have seen a lot with contracts where the company gets to the end, wants an upsell, wants continued business and things like that. And they didn't shape it in there. They literally left it open-ended. Because if you don't have your customers returning the information to you, especially if there's a license, that license doesn't end and access to the product doesn't end. They get to continue using it, right? We've all kind of known that, like, hey, I can license something as long as I get to continue accessing it. Things kind of still function, maybe not 100%, but 90%, then 80%, and it teeters off. But you still get to continue using the functionality of something post-license because you still have access to it. So I have seen that a lot in businesses, and they get really frustrated because they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, the customer's now doing that with that. That's not what we intended. Or they don't get to go sell it. I'm like, well, there's nothing in the contract that says that they can't. You gave it to them to use for this purpose. They're selling it, supports that purpose, even though you meant that to be a short-term purpose. They took it as a long-term because the contract didn't speak to it. Are you guys liking this? How's everyone doing out there? Yes. Right? We start to think a little bit. We get so excited about our sales right now that, we don't really think about what's the next level, what's the next step. Sometimes we think about future sales in the short term, like an upgrade or enhancement, but we don't really think about what your business is going to be up to 3, 5, 7 years from now, making sure that this is setting you up for success, because it's not just this customer or this supplier, it's all of them. Right? Everybody you're building and signing a contract with right now, let's say you sign 100 new customers this year. Awesome. 3 years from now, those 100 customers are going to what? What do you want them to do? How do you want them to behave? How do you want them to be interacting with your products? Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you guys are liking this. All right, consideration, other side. Okay, this one I got a great story on because I had somebody lose a lot of money on this one, and they were like, this was one of our favorite customers, and so on. But we don't always have insight into what is happening in our customers and our suppliers' world. But guess what? We are nothing as a business without them. And so it is good when we're looking through our contracts to make sure that we're getting what we need from our suppliers continually through the term of the contract. And with warning if there's going to be any changes. Same with our customers. We don't want our customers to just be taking our things and doing what they want with them. We agreed today for a certain product, for a certain use case, based on the conversations. But as we know, people get creative, right? I love Alex Hormozzi's idea about a brick. It's like, hey, you have a brick. What can you use that brick for? You can build a wall with a brick. You can hold a door with a brick. You can use it as a paperweight. There's a million things you can do with a brick, especially if that brick is made of different materials or interlocks with other things, has different shapes, colors. There's a lot of things we can do. And so while we might have given our product and services to a customer right here, right now for this purpose, what can they get creative with? And do you want them to get creative? Because they could get creative, not just for their use, but for their customers' uses, for their products. They can start making money off of your things. Did you mean for that? Did you price for that? And having the right terms in the contract based on how they may behave enables you to step in and ask for more revenue when it makes sense. Or give them permission because that's added value. We're having a great relationship. You're doing other things with us. It's all good. Same with your suppliers. Okay, their stuff is changing, but your products rely on their stuff. Are they able to just force changes on you? What if your technology can't keep up? What if you had a vacation plan for that month? Now what are you supposed to do? The contract was built right. You'll have the right amount of warning, phases, and ability to adjust to each of these things. Now, one of the stories I want to share with you kind of goes to these bullets that are on the screen right now. Understanding when we're contracting that we're contracting with an entity and not a person. And why this is important is we build relationships with people. And one of my clients, they had a great relationship with one of their customers, an amazing relationship. And that contract, though, it's not those people who are signing that contract, it's the entity, right? Company one signs product to sell product to company two. Well, company two got a new CFO, a chief financial officer. And CFOs are great because they can come in and they can look for ways to be more efficient. They're going to look at ways to balance your revenue better. They're going to look at your contracts, see if there's ways that you can maximize those, eliminate redundancies and things like that. And so that's what the CFO did for this customer. He came in and he was like, bam, do you guys see? You're already paying for these things. You're paying for them twice. Why don't we just use the one vendor that we already know and love? And that was my customer. My client, company A. Like, let's do that. Did you also know that we have these other products we're building that they could build off of this exact same one? So we don't have to pay for new vendors. We already have what we need. This contract has a use case that allows us to do this. So the CFO got really smart in doing these business decisions based on a pre-existing signed and ongoing supplier contract with my client, customer A. Well, customer became competitor. They started using the product in a way that was not foreseen at the time it was signed. It wasn't part of the discussions because here we were 3 years into a 5-year contract. The business plan for the customer had changed. They were now creating different types of products for their customers based on how market conditions had changed. And here they were with my client's product and using it this way. And so my client ran to the legal team and said, legal team, we don't want this being used this way. This wasn't what we talked about with these guys. We need this to be stopped. Now it's actually interfering with one of our new product rollouts. we can't compete with them. They're using our own product to compete with us. And worse, they're not even paying us more for it. We're losing an entire set of revenue stream without even extra money for it. They're still paying the original fee that we had signed up for what was discussed as the use case. So legal team goes through, checks the contract, and this contract was written before I got there. And we were like, look, the way you had drafted the use case permission that you gave them, they are within their rights. And you didn't put anything in your contract templates that would give you the choice to pivot, stop this, do something of some type of action to protect yourself. None of that was available. So 3 years into a 5-year contract, for the next 2 years, my client, company A, had to continue providing under an existing contract their product to a customer so that customer could go in and compete and cannibalize what company A had intended to do over that 3 years. All because they did not think about forward movement of that customer. And it's true, we can't always think about like, hey, what products are going to roll out next. But we can think about limiting the use cases to what is agreed to and having the right conversations with our customers to get a sense of what direction they're going. Because when we get a sense of what direction they're going, we not only enable ourselves to have upsells and ongoing revenue, but we also get a sense of where the industry is going from somebody other than our own eyes. Our customers and our suppliers are very close in the vertical to us, right? And oftentimes when there's mergers and acquisitions, it's in the vertical to collapse those margins and to streamline things into the market. And by knowing what's going on, having the right conversations with our suppliers and our customers in a way that gives us that foresight, we can not only put the right terms in the contract now to secure and limit, right? We can give them a little bit of growth room, but hey, you hit certain boundaries, you got to come back to us. Or hey, you hit certain boundaries, we reserve the right to charge more or to change things. And then it gives you the insight into where the industry is going in an ancillary way to your business model, so that you can also be like, hey, these guys might be a good person to partner with to create a new product with them. Because imagine if my client had partnered with their customer, they both would have been making a better product and both would have been making revenue just by having those conversations along the way. So conversation and then building the contract that has that correct is going to streamline business, but also make you more robust in your future business plan as you navigate various opportunities, because you'll see them coming a lot faster. Yeah. All right. So on to our last main consideration, right? And that's consideration you, baby. You are always party number one on every document because you are number one and you're also a party. But where are you going? If you're signing a 5-year contract, what's your 5-year outlook? What are going to be your new product launches? What are going to be your new business opportunities? What's happening in the industry? Or do you plan on having supplier changes? Where are you looking to simplify your margins? Where are you looking to streamline all of your suppliers? And what might they do that's going to impact your customers and your products and your offerings? And then, of course, we know, especially in the world of AI, just the way AI has taken over so much, technology updates, legal updates, privacy has come into play in different ways. And we've all had to navigate and pivot to play this dance with these things. So while we cannot foresee all of it, we can have an idea the direction we're planning and building to go. And knowing this already for yourself, you can build this into your contracts so that your customers are now obligated to have the right conversations and triggers with you. And you are set up for your next success with them, as well as with your suppliers. And a story that happened with one of my clients is they were a big supplier for a company that had a good amount. They took they took a chunk of the industry. So it's kind of nice, right? They're like, we will be your primary and main supplier for this chunk of the industry. And we, by the way, of course, get some of our stuff from our suppliers. Supplier, client, and their customer. Well, two things happened. These guys had somebody come in as a customer saying, hey, we actually can give you 10 times the amount of business these guys do. And we'll do it exclusively with you. We'll sign exclusivity, meaning we're not going to go anywhere else. Guaranteed business 10 times more in this industry. But here's the thing. We've got to be your exclusive provider in the market. Okay. Well, these guys over here who were pre-existing, they didn't know about this. But my client has an amazing business opportunity. Amazing, right? 10 times. But guess what? They're in a contract. They're in a contract over here with these guys. And that contract gave my client two choices. One, you can terminate with enough notice on certain anniversaries. So my client could wait for those anniversaries and give that notice. Bam, automatically out. Or there was a pivot term. And a pivot term means something that is, if it's triggered right, you can pivot and shift. And what my client did is they realized there was a pivot term in there. They said if things change with their supplier, they were allowed to pivot. And that pivot could include terminating the contract. So here these guys were, 10 times exclusivity offer, but they had to be the exclusive provider. And so they went to the supplier. Said, supplier, did you know we can also bring you 10 times more business? Right, you see how this is going? And they changed the terms up here. So now this contract allowed these guys to get out. These guys were given no notice. None. My client decided that for the sake of the business relationship, they would give these guys 60-day notice. So on 60-day notice, this company was suddenly out of its primary supplier for all of its customers. And within 30 days, it was unable to pay its bills. Not because my client did anything wrong. My client made a brilliant business decision based on what came up for them. These guys had signed a piece of paper that didn't secure them the opportunity to have good notice. That didn't give them the security and opportunity to phase things out. That didn't give them the opportunity to even find a new supplier or renegotiate or find something else. These guys were just able to terminate and cut them loose. This company ended up struggling very much because of that, while everybody else in the vertical thrived. So this is one of those ways that, you might suddenly have amazing opportunities that you can't foresee right now come up in the future. And you don't want to have to say no because you're in a contract for less. Your company is worth its entire future and worth everything. And you want to make sure you are set up for that success. So that is the key of today's main lesson. Contract for today, what you know today, all the conversations, the sales, the opportunity, the exchange of value, product and services that are going to happen with your suppliers and your customers. But do know tomorrow is going to happen because business happens. And it's not always a bad thing that things change. It's not a bad thing that there is growth for your suppliers. There is not a bad thing that there is growth and change for you. And it is not a bad thing that there's growth and change for your customers. The key is to make sure that your contracts and the terms you're agreeing to foresee that and set you up for success based on your goals and where you're going. And you could do that by making sure they're set up for your business plan, but also a look at the market. Now, we're going to open it up to your live Q&A. So go ahead and find your chat button and go with your little fingers there. And while you're finding that, I want to let you know that today's freebie is a free non-disclosure agreement with customization. A non-disclosure agreement is what you can use with any of your business relationships, customer, suppliers, vendors, partners, freelancers, any B2B relationship. And what it's going to do is it's going to protect your ideas and your information. Because as you're going through and having these conversations with the other side, You don't want to be giving away things that they can then now go and take to your competitors, that they could take and do what they want with them, make their own products and do things like that. You want what you're sharing to both be intimate and helpful and valuable to build great, trustworthy relationships. But that trust also requires that things are not being taken advantage of. And it's not that anybody means harm. Again, business opportunities are business opportunities. And sometimes information from one party can end up just go in a direction we didn't intend it to, based on some of the examples I gave you earlier today. So an NDA is going to help you with that. You can find that there at ceolegalcoach.com/free NDA templates. All right, now let's get into your questions. Let's see what's coming in. Oh, you are very welcome. I'm glad you guys are liking this. I'm very glad. This is why I get on every day to help you all. So thank you. And thank you for being here, by the way. Thank you. These are actually really exciting for me every day to come and help all of you because I feel like I get to connect and share my crazy experiences out there. So thank you. All right. What types of clauses should you look for? Okay. So of course, every single company is going to be a little bit different, but some of the key clauses that or areas of your contracts you're going to want to look for are going to be the use, whether that's a use grant under a license, the use of the product itself, your services, and things like that. Sometimes, the services, like if you're a caterer, it exists here and now, and then that is that. But even when the day is over, are you supposed to clean up? What do they keep? Do they have to return anything to you? Just having the what happens when the event ends. So the use and then ending, which is we talked about today. And things ending is going to be the term. What is the term of the contract? How long is it happening? How long is it active and alive? What happens at the end of that term, right? If it officially is over, no more terms, no more contract is active, no more money is being exchanged, no more products or services are being exchanged. Now what? So having that on there. And then, of course, what kind of happens with the next business? Is there going to be an auto renewal? Is there going to be conversations? Things like that, right? Especially if it's software or something, do you want them to still have access to it where they can use it without it being supported? Things like that, where you're just like, okay, what's the next step? When it's all over and done with, I'm not going to need more money for my customers. I'm not involved with delivering anything. What happens? And same with your suppliers. And then a couple other clauses to look at is the termination itself. Right? We talked earlier about having the ability to terminate can be great for business, but it can also be really bad for business if you're on the wrong side of it. So termination, what triggers it? Is there a notice period? Is there a phase out period? What is the impact of that termination on you, your supplier, and so on? Just understanding that and trying to offset concerns, because you do want everybody to be able to pivot and navigate their business as necessary, because we want businesses to keep thriving and going. We don't want people to go bankrupt because you were stuck in a contract. But that isn't good for anybody anymore. But at the same time, you don't want to suddenly go bankrupt because the contract was terminated. So that is also important. And then the other one that we didn't really talk about today is how guaranteed is that revenue? How guaranteed is the revenue? Yeah, it's a 5-year contract, but if they can terminate early or certain things can happen along the way, guess what? That revenue is not actually guaranteed for that term. There's even things called force majeure, for example, that certain things out of people's control can come in and sort of pause one party's side of those obligations. And if one party isn't delivering, well, then the other party's probably not paying. So things like that are really important. In fact, I'm going to have a training coming up here soon. I have one with Small Business Development Center regarding getting financing from your existing contracts. And a big part of that is looking at how guaranteed that revenue is. But then we also have other ones about like what provisions in your contract impact your revenue. So those are both trainings that are going to be coming up here in the next few weeks. So keep your eye out for those. Yeah. And of course, everything would be based on your business model and your supplier contracts or other things we look at. But I'd say those are some of the big key ones off the top of my head. Yeah. Great question. What else do we have? Balancing the flexibility of meeting what your business needs are versus what your customers are asking. Okay, yeah, right. Sometimes customers aren't going to sign unless they get certain things. It's like, that's great. You want our revenue forever. You're not going to get it forever. You got to do these things, or you're going to make these carve outs. How do we balance these? Yeah. So I would say two things. Let's look at your business model. Let's look at what you need, what you don't need, and kind of make a hierarchy. Hey, these are core. These are core. If we don't have these, we could end up bankrupt. We could end up in non-compliance with the supplier agreement. We could end up violating something, and that's just we're gonna lose the business, right? That's not ever worth it. But then there's other things that are like, it's nice to have these. It'd be nice to have those. We can start to sort of wash away the intensity of them. It's one thing to be like, you can never terminate, to, okay, you can't terminate unless A happens. That's different, right? So we start to make these little carve outs, but we don't take away, we don't suddenly say, hey, you could totally, terminate whenever you want, except for when it doesn't, the way we frame and make those little carve outs can be really important. So first and foremost, what's the hierarchy of what you need as a business to stay compliant, to stay in business, to not violate your supplier agreements, because your supplier agreements might have requirements. And then from that, making sort of, these are non-negotiables. Well, these are ones that we can kind of make you some carve outs, but we're not going to move far. And these are others that are nice to haves, but we don't need them. So we put them in there as a default, but there's certain customers, right? Sometimes it's not worth giving away a lot of risk to pivot and make a business decision for a $100 customer. But if you have a $100,000 customer, you might be a little bit more lenient. So knowing what those are, knowing what those impacts are, I'd say is how to best balance those two interests, is really looking at the risk versus the reward for you, and understanding that customers don't get everything they want. They don't. You need to be in business, and you need to do business the right way. And you have the right to do that. And you're not going to be the only business out there doing that. And so having those boundaries is actually really good for business, because it gives you, just like setting boundaries as a person, bam, you can and cannot do this in my life. You cannot treat me this way. You cannot speak this way, and so on. Same with your business. You can and cannot treat our terms this way. You cannot and can treat our business model this way. You can and cannot treat our product this way. You can and cannot treat our suppliers this way. And setting those boundaries is actually how you have a strong and thriving business. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. If you have questions that come up after, right? Like if you start to think about them after the fact, that is totally okay. Go ahead and comment below on this. There's a thread going. You can go ahead and comment there, and I'll always reply as soon as I can. You could also reach me through my website, ceolegalcoach.com. Always happy to respond to questions for sure. And in fact, I'm actually going to have a poll coming out later today asking what topics you guys want for your next these webinars. So let me know what's important to you, and I'll make sure that you're getting what you need, because I always want these for you. All right, this is our longest one we've ever gone, guys. I'm just going to take one more question, because it is middle of a Thursday, and I want to make sure you all have the time to get back to work. What type of contract? Oh, geez. Okay. There is a time and a place to start from templates. There are, right? I give away a free NDA template for everyone. And that is because NDAs are a very limited universe. They are about confidential information and treating it with respect. Bam, easily defined, easily scoped, very easy to handle and customize. When we're talking about our agreements with our suppliers and our customers, there's a lot more going on. It's not just the business model, right? You can't just be like, well, this was a competitor's contract and use that, which, by the way, don't. That's copyright infringement and misappropriation. But two, their situation with their suppliers is going to be different than yours. And their business model, their plan for the next 3, 5, 10 years is probably going to be a little bit different than yours. You might start going like this with your competitors, realizing there's times you're the all-star, and then there's other times you're directly competing with each other. And this is based on how you plan. And so your contract itself needs to speak to that. Now, your contracts do not need to be wholly customized, all over and rewritten every time you have a customer. No, no, no. Your supply, we talked about boundaries earlier, when you set boundaries with your supplier-based contracts, you know the boundaries of what you can and cannot agree to in your customer contracts. And so just by knowing the boundaries and having those boundaries, we talked about the question a few minutes ago about knowing what you can't negotiate. You can negotiate, but a little bit versus what, like, this is a walkaway point. We will not give you that. When you have these boundaries, you could just preset them into your templates. So once you have a really good template that is customized for where you are, you only need to update that as your business changes. So 3, 5, or 7 years usually. And depending on how dramatic things are changing for you, you probably don't need to change much. Business doesn't usually change completely and wholly dramatically unless it's a completely new product line and something like that. So once you kind of have those core boundaries, that's what you're going to want to do. So I would not recommend just going out and getting a free template online for your customer, your supplier agreements. That's not going to do you good. In fact, it might have some of those terms that you don't see there or that you don't know there and actually catch you off guard and do you harm, like the one did for that customer who didn't realize that they were on paper that was not meant for their relationship type with the supplier, and it ended up harming them. And I think they lost a good chunk of their business if they didn't end up going bankrupt over that one contract. So you don't want to have terms in there that you don't know what they are. So I would recommend getting with somebody, whether that's an attorney, a legal coach like myself, a contract specialist, just somebody who's going to be able to walk through those and refine those areas based on your business model for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all. This has been absolutely wonderful. I'm the CEO, legal coach Acacia Thornton. Have an